This set of ideas becomes clearer in the notes which became Aristotle's most famous book, Politics.
The first question he addressed was slavery. The Greek for slave was instrumental vocali, which means tool that talks. Slaves weren't allowed to breed without permission, and Poseidonius wrote that when slave women gave birth, they should carry on working for the rest of the day. Though you can imagine people today saying, oh, how marvellously natural. I mean, we were going to give the cleaner the day off on the day she gave birth, but once I read Poseidonius, I thought, well, she'll find it much more spiritual if I make her scrub the loft.
And what about this one? A slave's evidence was not admissible in court unless they had first been tortured, and if he was disabled in the process, the owner received compensation. The way Aristotle justified slavery was by saying that it was natural, that it was to the benefit of everybody if we each play out our natural role. As you put it.
Some are intended by nature to be lord and master, while he who can do no more than labour with his body is by nature a slave.
By way of proof, he offers that
it is also nature's intention to distinguish even the bodies of freemen and slaves. The latter are usually endowed with strength to suit their employment, while the upright carriage of the former renders them unfit for servile work.
Which is convenient. I would help, but it's the upright carriage, you see.
in his writing in Politics, Aristotle was trying to apply his philosophy to governing Athens. He had to work out what was everyone's natural state and how could they be kept there.
Women, like slaves, said Aristotle, should take their place as inferior beings to comply with nature. Though to be fair, he also quoted Hesiod approvingly, when he said for a man to create a household he needs...
first a house, then a wife, then an ox.
He also said...
women should marry at the age of about 18 years, and men at about 37, but then their prospective powers of procreation will decline simultaneously.
It's worth noting that he wrote this when he was about 37.
Aye, girls. Very nice.
Then he insisted that conception should always take place in the winter, as strong winds from the north ensure sturdy babies. In which case there were probably ancient Greek Geordies that went, "I were conceived in a blizzard, mum!"
But as in ethics, while he justified slavery and the inferior role of women, he wasn't a fan of the rich. He wrote,
"Some persons believe that the whole idea of their lives is to increase their money without limit. They turn every quality or art into a means of getting wealth. As such, they are intent upon living only, and not upon living well.
So,
a watch should be kept over the social group which happens to be flourishing at any one time. Raise no man too high above his fellow citizens."
His idea was that the poor couldn't be put in charge because they were envious of the rich, so couldn't rule fairly. But also, Aristotle saw the rich as unfit to rule because their main concern was protecting their wealth from the poor. The best way to rule, he said, was to
attempt a strengthening of the middle class, which will put a stop to dissensions rising from inequality.
As with ethics, it's important to realise here that he wasn't talking about a middle class as we know it. There wasn't a whole social strata moving around Athens going, "Oh, we've got the builders in at the moment, it's absolute hell. We're having the columns and the statues taken out so that we can knock the bath and the temple into one."
some of Aristotle's ideas may sound odd to us, but the fact that they're as pertinent as they are is extraordinary. He was writing 2,400 years ago, when everybody believed in oracles, which were places where people went to ask the gods for advice. And then a priestess, sometimes in a trance, would mouth the answer of the gods with a cryptic message.
Aristotle was working in an environment in which every belief was dominated by spirituality. Food supply, social status, biology, astronomy were all assumed to be the work of divine orders.
which makes it extraordinary that his explanation of the universe wasn't overtaken until the 16th century, that his work on the categorisation of animals wasn't overtaken until the 18th century, and his knowledge of Olympic winners wasn't surpassed until the 20th century.
Jamie Botch.
Yes, the flamboyant.
Another constraint on Aristotle's thinking was that Athens had to be in a constant readiness for war, and this affected his attitudes on every issue, even music.
The learning of music should not harm the body by rendering it unfit for military training.
In particular, he mentions the flute.
There is another objection to the flute. It is an instrument expressive not of moral character, but rather of orgiastic states.
James Galway, there's more to you than meets the eye. The decline of Athens did result in its eventual fall to Macedonian invaders, and following the death of Alexander the Great, there was an anti-Macedonian backlash, a sort of, well, they come over here, they take our philosophers' jobs.
Aristotle was charged with impiety, the same charge made against Socrates that resulted in his death sentence. So for the second time, Aristotle left Athens. But his achievement had been to revolutionise the idea of thought, so that it was no longer a pursuit for its own sake, but something to be applied so that we can find out how everything around us works, and how we should work to fit in with our surroundings.
As he left Athens, what would he have made of the American lecturer that I saw just over there, who was lecturing some students and pointing to a building where 500 jurors used to sit in one of the world's first law courts, and he said, "The important point to note here is where the agumniation meets the triglyph." And I really regret now not grabbing hold of him and saying no. No, it isn't. This was where, at the dawn of civilization, the most extraordinary experiments in human history, including debates and legal battles and assemblies, were carried out. And the agumniation probably meets the triglyph because the plasterer wanted to knock off early and go and watch the Olympics.
1 year after leaving Athens, Aristotle died. Eventually the Greek cities were taken over by Rome, though the Romans held the Greek philosophers in high esteem and translated their works into Latin. Aristotle was adopted by Muslims under the Ottoman Empire, and his ideas became the basis for the philosophy of the Catholic Church, to the extent that the Vatican passed a papal law that his system had to be taught as correct. This was because they could use his ideas of everyone staying in their God-given order, though for some reason they missed out some bits, such as where he condemned those with too much wealth. One of the most impressive sides to Aristotle was that he questioned everything. He never accepted anything should be as it is because it's the law or because it is.
And because Aristotle saw every part of the universe as connected, when he questioned one aspect of it, he questioned the lot. Compare that to today, when society increasingly regards all ideas as a nuisance.
If you want to be a successful politician, have no opinions. You'll only need to change them again. And if you want to be a celebrity, be as vacuous as possible.
The motto of Aristotle's Academy was that education is valuable because it is right for men to inquire. Whereas today education seems to be all about tests and remembering facts, summed up by the teacher I heard about, who asked her class, "Right, come on everybody, what did the Vikings come in? Come on, we did this yesterday." Until one kid went, "Oh, was it longboats, miss? No. Was it ships, miss? No. Oh, come on, we've done this. It's hordes. The Vikings came in hordes." What would Aristotle have made of the system now, where almost every course or project has to be sponsored rather than be an aid to inquiry, so that soon a teacher will ask a kid, "What's 2 and 2?" and if the kid says 4, the teacher will say, "No." The correct answer is, the number sponsored by Accurist is 4.
John Stuart Mill, of his own free will, on half of understanding was particularly ill.
If you're not uninterested or over-keen, but just curious enough, the Open University is hosting the Mark Steele Lectures website at www.open2.net, with more on all the great thinkers in the series. So now's a great time to buy a computer.
A lovely little thinker, but a bugger when he's pissed.
BBC 4 is available with others on cable, satellite and now Freeview, a new 30-channel lineup. For your free guide, call out.